Railway Conversations with Doc Frank.
Hello and welcome back to the show. My guest today is Michael Thiel from Austria. Michael is the CEO of Frauscher Sensor Technologies, a small to medium-sized signaling component supplier. And we talk about his way to become a CEO in the railway industry, how he came to Frauscher as a company, and what he does and what the secrets are to make Frauscher successful in the marketplace, and to use an old phrase, punch beyond their weight. So it's a bit of a David against Goliath story. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please subscribe and share it with a friend or colleague. I thank you. This podcast is not sponsored by third parties, which means uninterrupted listening to the episodes for you, and I hope you appreciate and enjoy that. If you want to support the show to keep it going, there are two ways you can do it. One is the typical request for podcast: subscribe and share with your friends. The other one is specific to the show and myself. I host a training portal with arguably the world's most comprehensive course offer on digital signaling technologies and everything to do with high capacity. Some of my trainings are one of a kind, which means unique in the world. For example, the high capacity signaling blueprint, the high capacity railway mindset training, or most recently my course about digital signaling interoperability. All of those courses are online, so you can watch the lessons at times convenient for you and as often as you like. And there is an industry-leading Q&A support where I will answer your questions not just during your training, but at least for further 12 months after you completed your course. What you can do that would be really nice is checking out this training portal, which you find at docfranktraining.podia.com. That is docfranktraining.podia.com. And if you find that you or a coworker of you can benefit from any of those courses, I would be very happy to see you growing your knowledge, understanding, and confidence through any of my trainings. Thank you. But now, please do enjoy this episode. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. You are the Chief Executive Officer of a signaling supply company called Frauscher, which is very well known, I believe, in the field of exit counters predominantly. And I had during my career a lot of struggle with Frauscher. We will get back to that later in the conversation. So tell us a little bit about your career path. How do you become a CEO in the railway industry?
Okay. Yes, actually, my whole professional life happened in the railway industry. I have a very strong railway family background. My father, both of my grandfathers, my wives were in the industry, some cousins. It goes back even to grandfathers, which built on the first lines in Germany as construction civil engineers. So railway was in our DNA. And when I was young and had to decide what professional way I go, so railway was one of the first options at that time. And as I'm born and grow up in East Germany, former GDR, in Leipzig, we had a very famous transportation university in Dresden, where railway engineers are produced on a high scale, I would say, every year. And this is what I joined and where my career starts. In the middle of my university, of my study, we had the reunification of Germany, East and West, and the wall fall down, very exciting historical times. So half of my university I finished then under new circumstances, let's put it that way. And then actually the existing railway industry from Western Germany, like Siemens, at that time Alcatel, Scheidung Bachmann, all these players, but even Deutsche Bahn at the time, it was not Deutsche Bahn, I'm not sure. Queuing up and taking all the engineers which are coming out of that university as they were very well educated. So this is when I started my career in a design consulting office, which was a subsidiary of East German Railway, Deutsche Reichsbahn, EVDR at that time. And I started with designing electronic interlockings. So after reunification, the whole modernization goes on, and a huge bunch of projects in electronic interlocking came up in East Germany. And I was a young design engineer for that kind of things. Then I get a team leader, project engineer, and then some Western German company, IBB, wanted to participate on this growth in the market of signaling in East Germany and wanted to set up an office in Leipzig. And from project interactions, we know each other, and they offered me the position if I should build up an office in Leipzig. So this I did as a very young engineer from the scratch. Then it was an IBB subsidiary with a couple of people. Then IBB, Braunschweig company, small interlocking for industrial railways applications, were bought by ABB, Daimler-Benz Transportation. This is when everything shaked up a little bit in that company, and I got offered to be the managing director of the whole IBB group with all the offices all over Germany, which I took. And then I slowly faded my activities into ABB Daimler-Benz Transportation as a kind of sales technical engineer, as a parallel job to my managing director of the design company, IBB. And then ABB Daimler-Benz Transportation was bought by Bombardier. And this is actually where the real career as a manager in the signaling industry started, I would say. Then I was responsible for the operations of signaling in Central Europe. But then something very weird happened. At that time, Bombardier decided, I think it was around 2000, 2001, we don't want to follow up the interlocking market in Germany anymore, which was the main strategic goal of all of us in Braunschweig at the time. The main market for Bombardier signaling RCS at that time is UK. And I had the task as a head of operations in Germany and a signaling engineer to close some branches we had and terminate contracts with German railways, with ÖBB and so on, and also lay down some people. And this frustrated me so much as we were working for years on stepping in the German interlocking market. And then I decided to leave as this doesn't have a perspective. I joined Balfour Beatty at that time. Balfour Beatty was more in catenary and power supply at that time in Germany, and had the strategic goal to build up a signaling unit, business unit, and a multidisciplinary unit, which I was heading then. And in that course of this developing this business, a lot of stories in between, joint venture with Bombardier again, and so on. I got the task, or I gave myself the task to acquire the company Frauscher, because Frauscher was already supplying Bombardier and Balfour Beatty with Excel counting systems. And on the Innotrans 2008, I approached the owner, Mr. Frauscher, and said, I would like to buy your company. Then he said, we know each other already a little bit. Then he was laughing. I say, Michael, forget this will never happen, but maybe you can work for me. And then I was laughing and said, this will never happen. Such a small company at that time. And I'm the big corporate manager. So then another year passed, and then we came together via headhunter somehow. things changed in Belfabidi and so on. And I took the opportunity to join Frauscher as a managing director at that time, which was a difficult decision at that time, and also a culture change from the big corporate with offices in Berlin going to the countryside of Austria in this small company at that time, approximately 10 million euro sales, 50 people. But I took the opportunity. The risk was, will it work with the owner and me? And as we are coming from different galaxies, I would say. But it worked actually very well. And Mr. Frauscher had a lot of trust in me. And after half a year, he stepped completely out of the business and say, from here on, you take over. Main goal is growth, internationalization, innovation, and so on. And I remember as of today, as I always struggling with the size of the company and the opportunities to grow, he told me, Michael, in 10 years, Frauscher can be a 30 million euro company. This was the goal. This was 2009. And actually, 2 years later, we had this already. And from that moment on, we are growing every year with approximately 10% until today. So this is how it went up. So, and of course, I started as a managing director of an Austrian company, but with all the internationalization, setting up international branches. Now we have 18 entities in the group worldwide. Now we call us CEO. And we build a group, and in the group management, we manage all the entities in the worldwide market. That's my career path.
Yeah, I've seen that you've got branches in even in China. You've got a lot of work in India. I believe you manufacture even in India.
Yes.
So, I mean, I was kind of wanted to ask what fascinates you about Frauscher. You mentioned in your previous response that you were kind of apprehensive to change from a much larger multinational company into a seemingly small, medium-sized company, which at the time seems to be more, well, very local. But was it just the good relationship that you had with the company owner that made it attractive at the end of the day, and then you got to like it? Or if you look back today, would you actually say, well, that was a great decision, and I'm very happy to stay? I mean, you've been with Frauscher for what, like 15 years or so, which is a very, very long time for a CEO. So there must be something that you actually like. Yeah, and maybe even better in hindsight than what you would have liked, or the opportunities you would have had in one of these large corporate organizations, where you probably have to, well, toe the line a bit more, and have less degrees of freedom that maybe you had for your growth at Frauscher.
Yes, of course, all this is an aspect on that. And within my career, especially in Belfabidi, I also was managing director of the IBB subsidiary. We bought a smaller company in East Germany. At that time, Signalbau Stassfurt, where I was also managing director. I had a joint venture with Bombardier, where I also was one of the managing directors. So I always enjoyed business life in a big corporate with all the constraints and governance and processes and hiccups you have in these kind of organization. But I also enjoyed always parallel having my own business where I can act, where I can develop and create something and have a strong, dedicated team. So I always enjoyed to be independent of the big corporate process world. Let's put it that way. So this made it attractive, definitely, to run a company like Frauscher. But the other aspect is I knew the Frauscher technology very well. I as a signaling engineer and working that many years in the industry, I understand what is there on wayside element technology, especially in X accounting. And I saw Frauscher as an extremely innovative team with groundbreaking technology, which had his limitation out of managed by a single owner. And I saw a lot of potential in building up this company based on the technology Mr. Frauscher and his team had developed and has innovated. So these are the main two aspects. I like mountains, I like Austria. So this was maybe also an aspect. Yeah, so then I took this opportunity to be my own boss and really can, based on a cool technology and a cool team, develop something. This was the attractiveness. And I'm always disturbed by big corporate way of working now. So it was it was actually very funny in my first weeks in Frauscher. I was sitting on my desk and 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, actually, I have done everything what I want to do today, but it feels weird to go home. No? And the big corporates always until 6, 7, 8 in the office. And I tried to analyze what's happened. And actually, it was you purely concentrate on work, business, technology, and team. No fighting each other. No, and 30% of the big corporate life is forget it. Let's put it that way.
Waste.
Not business
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
focused to do things to defend yourself, to try to be compliant with rules which you have to accept. And this is different when you run a small business like this, no? It was quite interesting.
Mm, mm, mm. I mentioned before that I competed with Frauscher a couple of times. Once with Siemens, they also manufacture exit counters. They have done so for a long time.
Was
And then a few years later, after I changed from Siemens to Thales, you mentioned previously Alcatel. By the time I went there, they were bought up by Thales, and they're doing exit counters as well. And both products of both companies are actually quite good. But every time I found myself competing against Frauscher, and as you do normally as the big corporate, when you compete against a much smaller competitor, which Frauscher was at the time, you try to kind of play them down. Yeah, well, the weaknesses of a small company, they don't have a support network, they are not reliable enough. Who knows whether they're still in business in 2 or 3 years? But it wasn't a very credible argument. I didn't make this myself. It was more like a mindset thing that surely those big corporations like Siemens and Thales must have a competitive edge over Frauscher. But what I found was that even in areas where we may have had or we may have perceived technical advantages, Frauscher was catching up very, very quickly. And once they've overtaken, they basically just they were off. Yeah, that's so. I think to me, or my impression always was that Frauscher seemed to be much closer to the client than the bigger organizations, much more focused on specifically exit counters, while the people at, say, Siemens or Thales, for example, they looked at exit counters and point machines and signals and interlockings and ETCS and all kinds of stuff, the whole portfolio of signaling products. And the other thing about Frauscher was the innovation speed. Yeah, so when they said something like on the next InnoTrans we will have this and this and this innovation, and I thought, well, the next InnoTrans is like 6 months away. This is not possible. Yeah, and coming from a mindset, it wouldn't have been possible in a company like Siemens, for example, simply because the innovation cycles were slower. Yeah, much more obstacles to overcome. But with Frauscher, it seemed when they really set their mind on a certain improvement, on a certain additional product feature, they implemented this very, very quickly and they brought it to market very, very quickly. And in hindsight, I really think it was that strong focus that didn't disperse the activities in all different directions, but it was just the exit counter. So this is the one product that we need to improve. And then you improved it, and then you had an approved product, and of course you needed to bring it to the market because that was pretty much the only product that you had. Um, how big of a role? Firstly, would you agree with my analysis for the reasons of Frauscher's success, and how important is innovation to Frauscher? You mentioned it already.
Yeah, so of course I can agree on most of things you have said. It's very clear as Frauscher has a very focused portfolio, which is I would not call Excel counting. It's build detection itself. There are a lot of applications which doesn't count Excel as such. This is our core business, and we are fully focused on that. So we live or die with that. So the claim for us internally was very clear. If we are with our portfolio not the best one in the market, I don't think there will be a long-lasting life for Frauscher itself. So innovation was key. But there's another, from my point of view, big aspect. When we entered certain international markets, we definitely did this with local resources, with a local team, local know-how. And with this, we build up a customer-facing network and a service and a response time in many things, in many aspects, which were completely unique in that regard. Even Alcatel or Thales or Siemens has a worldwide network, but the Excel counting experts are always in Braunschweig or in Stuttgart or whatever.
Yeah.
And response time was a mess. Lead time of deliveries is not compatible, I would say, to Frauscher. We can deliver every kind of project within 8 weeks. This is where the bigger companies are dreaming on. Of course, they have a bigger portfolio, they have a different supply chain to manage, a different way of production, and I know the production quite well, of Siemens and Thales from that time. So I know all the constraints, and we were able to identify the key success factors for us and really strengthen them and focusing on them. And we spend a lot of money going into markets, building up our sales network, which was actually in no market profitable from the day one. This is what I know, what big corporates even don't do. If you don't show on a PowerPoint from day one why you go in this market, why it's profitable, or latest in 1 or 2 years, you have to break even, no one takes money and invest in this. This is the strength of such private-owned entities. We have a long-term strategy. We say, okay, India will cost us the next 3, 4, 5 years money, but the market is big enough. Building up our position there will turn out profitable and successful later on. Today, India is our biggest market, our biggest single market. Almost 40% of our business volume comes out of India. We are market leading. We are the biggest supplier in India, but it was a hard time. And every other big corporate would have pulled the plug after a couple of years. The same experience in South America and North America. US is his own challenge in many aspects. Yeah, this is the advantage of such a focused company with a limited portfolio, and of course with shareholders which support the strategy. So it was the Mr. Frauscher Private Foundation at that time, which supported strongly all this internationalization. And the other thing is response time, flexibility. So if we identify features which bring us ahead of the competition or which are really strongly required by certain markets, we were able to streamline our R&D and focus on new things immediately. So we don't have that much constraints. We had a big budget on R&D. And of course, also based, we are from the day one profitable. So the company never had any debts at that time or external funding or whatever. We were from Mr. Frauscher was able to build up this company in the first years really, really profitable, purely based on the small business he has. And this was a good base for me to take this business and then internationalize it.
I think one thing that may have helped you from a sales perspective is the system nature of signaling. So quite often railway organizations ask for a complete new signaling system, for example, for new railway lines or for resignaling of a railway line. And wherever exit counters are popular or exit counters are required, there are signaling suppliers, signaling system suppliers out there that don't have their own exit counter products. For example, Alstom, for example, Bombardier at the time. Um, and rather than going to a direct competitor in the systems business, like Siemens or Thales, it was probably more attractive for them to go to a company like Frauscher, which didn't have any intention of competing in the systems business. Yeah, so from an Alstom viewpoint, Frauscher was a supplier more than a competitor, where Siemens, for example, would have always been a supplier but also a competitor. Whereas with their doubts whether you really get the best pricing or if they compete for the same product, whether the one company could use that component sales for, I don't know, making the other offer less attractive or something like that. So I could imagine that this was also very
Yes.
helpful, that Frauscher was never seen as a threat by the system
Yes.
suppliers.
No, no, this is actually the business model of Frauscher being the independent supplier on the wayside, especially Excel counting to the whole signaling industry. And it's not only the big ones, it's also the smaller ones in different countries. This was core of our business model and we cultivated this. This was definitely a strategy and helped us a lot in growing with customers like Alstom. But I have to say, companies like Siemens, even they have their own product, and they are, I would say, our biggest competitor in the markets and technology-wise. They are also our biggest customer. So there are a lot of regions where Siemens still uses Frauscher exclusively for a couple of reasons of market requirements, homologation, and so on. It's changing at the moment, but we were used to work with our competitors very closely also, which is tricky and not easy, but I think we managed quite well.
Yeah, I'm smiling because just recently I heard a presentation at a conference from Siemens about their ETCS introduction in Sydney, which also comes with the entire trackside system, like interlocking and exit counters. And with exit counters, they're basically forced to use Frauscher, probably because they were the first ones getting type approval in Sydney. And maybe there was a customer requirement that they said, well, you've got to use Frauscher exit counters. They didn't like it particularly much, at least not on the engineering level. I mean, if you're proud of if you work for Siemens, you're proud of your own company, and you know you've got these products yourself, then yeah, obviously you want to use it. But if you need to go through the struggle of type approval, and then you need to look at the global portfolio, because it's not just Australia asking for type approval of exit counters. Maybe the budget for type approvals for that year is already gone for some other markets, and then it's just not happening, or it's not supported by headquarters, and then yeah, well, they don't have much of a choice than buying from the competition. And I think you just explained it quite nicely, that you spend a conscious effort on not exploiting that position, to basically really remain in the position of a supplier, being supportive even to competitors, I mean, in Sydney, for example, Siemens isn't really a competitor yet for Execount. So at the moment, they are basically just a system provider that needs an Execounter product and has no other choice but coming to you. Yeah. But you could have tried to exploit this by, I don't know, beefing up the prices or something like that. And apparently you don't, which I think is clever, yeah, because otherwise what you're doing long term, if you try to exploit those situations, is basically driving those companies away from you. That they will do whatever they can to say, well, we need to get away from those guys as quickly as we can. Yeah. Whereas if the pricing is good, and at the end of the day, they may look at it and say, well, actually, this is cheaper than our own product, and we haven't even started talking about the cost of type approval. Uh, yeah, let's just stay with the easy path. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of aspects are really like this. There is also another aspect I would say, and that's why we as Frauscher, we are still very happy to work with companies like Siemens, even we are competitive in certain markets. But from my point of view as a signaling engineer, signaling gets so complex, R&D in signaling gets so expensive. The skills, the know-how you have to focus on is really growing. And as a company, you have to decide where you put your R&D budgets in. So does it make sense for a big integrator like Siemens to put a lot of R&D budget in this wayside component Excel counting if there are suppliers which can at least state-of-the-art systems deliver to you? Or should you focus on R&D and innovation on your level, on your scale, with the power of your organization managing really the complexity? That's why I think there will be always a life for all of us somehow. And even if you look in Excel counting, if you look Excel counting 15 years ago when I started and what we are doing today, we are transformed the company from a hardware company with embedded software to a almost pure software company today. So let's say 90% of our R&D resources are fully focused on software. This was the other way around 15 years ago. So the complexity, even in our things with U-links, cybersecurity, software interfaces, diagnostic, maintainability, all these kind of things, put so much complexity even on wayside things. I don't think today every company, every signaling integrator can do everything. And being state-of-the-art and innovative as you would like to be. So I think we are well established as a supplier who stays on his core know-how, Excel counting, and we are trying to innovate as much as possible on that. And we are still a good partner for all the companies, even if they have their own systems.
Couple of interesting points there. One, what I found interesting is that you are actually able to out-innovate bigger competitors such as Siemens, for example, even though they have a much bigger R&D budget. As you said, their R&D budget is much more dispersed across the entire portfolio. And the actual portion of that R&D that would be appropriated to Excel counters is probably smaller than the R&D that you spend on Excel counters, because your entire R&D budget goes into Excel counters or wheel sensors. Yeah. And the other thing is the software aspect.
Just to give you a number. So we have 100
Yeah.
people in R&D, and we are all only develop the ecosystem of Excel count with 100 engineers in the development. No other company, even Siemens, has that innovation focus on a component like Excel count.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Oh, that explains a lot. And the other thing is really the software aspect, because I mean there may be still some residual improvements that you can do with the hardware. For example, a long-term problems of Excel counters was the detection of smaller wheels. Yeah, or if you have things like high rails, for example, to identify those, or to clearly not identify those. The worst thing that you can happen is that you have a certain type of vehicle that sometimes you count the exits, sometimes you don't. That's the worst thing, the worst case scenario. But a lot of the improvements in exit counters these days are really in the functionality. You mentioned diagnostics. Do you have a system that you can integrate into a centralized diagnostic or maintenance support system that identifies certain failure types and gives instructions how to do what to do to repair those things quickly? Reset of exit counters is a huge thing. So if you can improve the reset procedures, for example, with remote reset or some kind of security loop that improves the safety of an exit counter reset, because there's always a risk. If you reset an exit counter to 0, but you have a vehicle in there, then it's an unsafe situation. And all these things, which are obviously all software driven. Redundancy is another thing. Yeah, that you can basically have a variety of evaluating different pairs of exit counters, and by doing so, you basically create a level of redundancy, even if a single counting point should fail, which all of you definitely know. Maybe the listeners don't, so that's why I'm geeking out a little bit on exit counters here. But it's clearly a point that the improvement potential at the moment, and probably over the last 10, 15 years, I guess, is predominantly on software related to the application and user friendliness of exit counters, if I can put it this way.
Yes, of course. So the majority of our R&D goes in these kind of functionalities or software data functions in a way where we have a strong movement in the last years. But of course, we are spending also a lot of R&D effort into making the products more reliable, more sustainable, more resistant against all the influences. And I always can like to point out the wheel sensor is the only SIL4 signaling product which has to survive reliably in the harshest environment. All other SIL4 equipment is nicely covered and maintained. But this thing is on the rail. It's on the rail in the desert in Saudi Arabia. It's on the rail in India underwater. And it's on the rail in Kazakhstan with minus 50 degrees. And it has terrible track conditions around, a lot of shocks and vibration, all these kind of things, a lot EMC disturbances from vehicles or whatever. And this is still a device which measures magnetic fields. So the challenges, the complexity to have a reliable, safe product is incredible. And a lot of R&D goes in these kind of improvements, which doesn't is recognized by the market or the customer as new functions and new innovation. It's more internally. So, and that's why I think as we are doing this, and we are not forced to develop only on innovation and new functions, we have a very good product. And all the challenging environments, especially trams, light rails, which are really the most difficult environment for axle counter, we are good in that. That's the point. Yeah. In InnoTrans, I can mention this already. We have developed in the last 3 years a data platform on our systems, where we purely a cloud-based data analyzing tool works with our system, which we have implemented as a pilot in Network Rail already in London Paddington, where we have just incredible results, where we can kind of predict the failures of sensors in a way which was never possible before. And now we are starting this and taking this off to really have a supporting system over the life cycle of our systems. By the way, this is a business model which Frauscher never pursued in the past. We were always developing, producing, delivering, forget. So when the system is commissioned, we were out of business and everything was done by the integrators or the operators. And now we are increasingly aiming for the market of lifecycle support and after sales with these data platforms. And it's really incredible what kind of results you can have there.
You mentioned the harsh environment on the rail for exit counting gets to be installed, and not to forget the deadly enemy of exit counters, the rail grinder. Is it still the case? I haven't dealt with exit counters for a long time. I think it's now 12 or 13 years or so that I did my last presentation on exit counters. Are track maintenance vehicles still the biggest problems? Do you still need to deinstall counting heads while you're doing track maintenance, or have you found some secret trick how you can leave the counting heads on the rail while there is grinding going on?
So this is very different from market to market or operator to operator. I think there are operators which are using Excel counting technology in different suppliers, especially in Europe, for many, many years. Their track maintenance technology has adapted and adjusted himself that both technologies can live very well together. And grinding is in these markets not an issue, as you can configure a grinding machine also in a way that the homologated wheel sensor suppliers can cope with it. But there are other markets where this is not the case, or where the operator just learn, oops, now I have Excel counting system, but when I grind my rail, all the sensors are destroyed. What do I do? So there is a development and a movement, and this is very much supported by all the Excel counting suppliers. And the whole industry was always looking for the wheel sensor, which is easy to mount, still safe and reliable, and can cope with all of these threats on track maintenance. But this is difficult and never went through. So the truth and the solution is an operator which works with the industry together, the track maintenance industry, the grinding machine and other machine manufacturers, and the wheel sensor industry together, find standard solutions, and everyone knows what he's doing. Yeah, but it's always an issue, especially in new Excel counting markets. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Once you shaved your first few 100 points, then you wake up and say, okay, well, I don't want to do this every time. Yeah. For a CEO, I have the impression, maybe because of your background, of your signaling background, you seem to be closer to your product than a CEO often is in like bigger companies, or where CEOs come maybe from different disciplines, more with an economic education or an MBA or something like that. So I think I can dare asking you a technical question. I already teased you a bit with that rail grinder stuff and so on, and you've done as expected well. What do you say when the argument comes up that exit counters are not that good because they can't detect broken rails?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite discussions all the time. So, as an Excel counting company or train detection company which is competing with the technology of track circuits, this question always comes up. But first, putting this in a historical content, track circuit was the first technology to detect trains. We all know how it works, but it has its limitations and constraints. And Excel counting is, let's say, replacing the core function of track circuits with a completely different approach, but with also different constraints. Reset is one of them, but with a lot of advantages to track circuits. And without evaluating anything or going in detail, just looking on the history, every market is changing to Excel counting. There must be a reason on that. So it started in Europe, it started or went to India, it went to Asia. Even SNCF, very strong track circuit market, has decided strategically to change the Excel counting 2 years ago. And track circuits were even used for transmitting data from the track circuit to the vehicle. So the change is not only related to Excel counting or not, it's related to a lot operational procedures in these rails, and operators still do it, like SNCF. So there's a reason. And the reason is that the advantages definitely compete the disadvantages. When it comes to rail brake detection, of course, technically and physically, it seems obvious that a broken rail, when it's really completely broken and cut it, interrupt the track circuit and is recognizable, or you can see it. But if you really talk to operators, how much of your broken rails are detected by track circuits? What does it lead in your operation? Because the only thing you see is it's occupied. So you have to understand what's going on. Modern track circuits are better on that, but they're still not these, let's say, even 90% reliable function of rail brake detection. First, rail brakes in a very different way. And what do I do with the information it's occupied? It's first signaling and operational information until this goes to track maintenance, and that there are so many other, that even the train driver has said there's a rail brake before the whole operational system makes out of occupied information a track maintenance task. So the practical relevance of this principle of track circuits are able to detect rail brakes is for us close to zero. And the history and the change to Excel counting shows this from my point of view. The other point is there are other technologies to detect or try to detect rail brakes. Even there is not a big breakthrough yet on that, but from my point of view, track circuits were never a good system to rely to detect rail brakes. So it's not a really big disadvantage for Excel counting. But it's used by everyone who just don't want change.
Yes, and that's exactly the point. I mean, I've suffered a lot under this clinging to the one feature of track circuits that cannot be physically replicated by Excel counters, which is broken rail detection. And there are all kinds of arguments that some types of track circuits only can detect rail brakes in one rail, but not in the other rail. And then there are certain types of rail brakes, as you mentioned, that will not be detected at all, simply because there's still enough rail left to make the track circuit work. And but if you love your track circuits and you don't want to change the Excel counters, then you come up with all those arguments. And even if one rail brake is detected and it can prevent an accident, it was worth everything. Yeah, and that's not really the case, because, as you said, if you really look at the bigger picture and you really come up with a total, more comprehensive cost benefit analysis, you will find that Excel counters are the better technology, because they are more reliable, they fail less often, they probably last longer than track circuits as well. So some railways, for example, yes, so Auckland in New Zealand was a good example in my region down here, where they did a resignaling and they looked at that topic and they changed everything from track circuits to Excel counters. And of course, they needed to go through all these internal struggles, the arguments for broken rail detection, against broken rail detection. And they said, well, you know what? You put everything on the scales, and at the end of the day, we thought Excel counters is the much better solution for us. Yeah, and as you said, many other countries follow suit. What I think one big advantages for exit counters that you currently see in Sydney. So Sydney is finally coming around after, I don't know, 15 years or so. When you introduce a new signaling system, but at the same time you want to keep your old signaling system running, what you do is you do your new signaling system with exit counters, and that means it can be overlaid to the existing track circuits of the old system. You can't overlay track circuits over track circuits because they interfere with each other. So by doing this, you can introduce your new system, your new signaling system based on exit counters without disrupting, without disturbing the existing system, and that reduces the need for shutdowns, for downtimes, for version changes, for things that can go wrong if you start changing with an existing system, like, oh, let's shift that track circuit from there 50 meters down and so on. And then you've got all kinds of side effects and so on. So that's definitely another advantage of exit counters, that you can put them almost on top of a track circuit, and well, they just
Yeah.
cooperate. Yeah, they don't interfere with each other. My list of questions is done, and I guess I probably have used up enough of your time. I found it very impressive. And so full disclosure, I mean, obviously, I said this before. I used to work for Siemens. I used to work for Thales. I definitely have no grudge with those companies, quite the contrary. So the last thing I wanted to do here is basically talking down those companies and their exit accounting offers, because I still think they have good products, and you kind of confirmed that. But I found it extremely interesting to demonstrate or to discuss how a smaller company that is specialized, that is focused, and part of that focus also meaning saying no to other things, like you're not buying small interlocking companies or level crossings, adding level crossings to your portfolio, something like that. So just saying, well, yeah, level crossings may use wheel sensors, so that's what we do. But somebody else is doing the level crossing. That a company with like this, with that mindset and that discipline, can be extremely successful in the marketplace. I think there's absolutely no doubt that Frauscher today is a very successful company, a company that's there to stay, that will keep growing probably. So yeah, so well done. I think it's a quite instructive success story that we had today.
Yes. No, I can confirm. So we at the moment we even increase our growth rate again with strong market demands, and there are still, let's say, areas in the world which needs a lot of Excel counting, and the market is big enough, but the complexity, the requirements are getting bigger and bigger. And the entry level for new players in the market is really high. So we feel comfortable with the players which are there today. And I think we can have all nice business together. Yeah. And as you rightly said, I'm more than 15 years now as CEO in the company. So maybe it's also sometimes time to change in the next years to hand over to the younger generation. But I can proudly say our company is quite young. So we have an average age of 34 or something, 33. I'm one of the oldest there. But it's still fun, and it's as long the company is successful, we have a shareholder which supports the strategy which we have discussed very heavily. So it's still fun, and the success is always enjoyable by the team. So let's see what's happened in the next years.
I would personally hope that you still stay around for a while, because I'm a big fan of continuity when it comes to management positions, especially in signaling. I think this is one of the industries or the disciplines where it really pays off if you have management that really understands the issues, that really understands the technologies, the problems that people have, say in R&D, for example, or also in sales, understanding the clients and so on. And it's difficult if you have managers that come from other industries, say automotive is just one example, and then they say, "Well, automotive manufacturing is so complex. What can possibly go wrong in signaling?" And then they do it for like 6 months, and all of a sudden, go, "Oops, I think I underestimated this a little bit." And and then once they get into it, they are gone again up to the next position. And I think that's not a healthy environment at all. And I would think that one of the reasons of the success of Frauscher in the last 5 to 10 years is that you are still there. Yeah, after you were already there 15 years ago.
No, and this not only applies to a CEO. Of course, you have also long development cycles from the product idea to a homologated product. This is much longer than normal CEOs would survive in a company. So, who CEO has this long-term strategy on that and the vision and try to execute this? That's an aspect. But the other aspect, and this you also can see on Frauscher, is the face to the customer. So if you look in all our entities, Australia, China, whatever, we have long-term management teams there. Our employees have developed the relationship to the market, the understanding of the market, and we don't change people. No? So that's so. I'm very, very sensitive of changing salespeople just because the market goes down or you have some issues, because the developed customer relations you have in a market, they are so valuable, and you cannot build them up just by changing people all the time. So this is also one of our principles, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, you can get the context in virtually no time, but the relationships, the real understanding of the customer, that's what takes time. And that's where that continuity makes a lot of sense. So I absolutely agree. Michael Thiel, thank you very much for your time. All the best for your
Thank
company.
you,
Hope you
Frank.
keep having fun there. And
Maybe I see you in InnoTrans.
I don't think so. I don't think
No,
so. Even though
no.
it's been a while that I've been back to Berlin because I was born there.
Oh,
I have no plans of coming back anytime soon. Yeah.
okay. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Doc Frank. Let me jump in here right now to tell you about a new training which is called High Capacity Signaling Blueprint. This is a very unique all-in-one training that gives you everything you need to know about high capacity signaling. The foundations, where you can compare what conventional signaling is to what high capacity signaling is with all the necessary definitions. Then we look at CBTC, communications-based train control, as the prime technology for high capacity signaling and how this is done. In the third part of the training, we look at varieties of the European Train Control System, ETCS, another global train control technology, and how this can be used to achieve high capacity signaling. And then at the end of the training comes an actual blueprint how to apply CBTC or ETCS to get a real high capacity outcome for your railway. It's basically 3 training courses in one, and as usual for my trainings, there is a study group available for joint learning with other people taking the same training. And after the training, you will get into an alumni community, which is exclusive for my training students, where you can ask questions and get them answered by myself on an ongoing basis for a guaranteed minimum of 12 months. You can sign up on my usual training platform, which is docfranktraining.podia.com/HCS blueprint. I said it again, docfranktraining.podia.com/HCS blueprint, with HCS being the acronym for High Capacity Signaling.
If it's important for you to learn about the latest trend in railway signaling, which is high capacity signaling, then this is the training for you.
Hi, it's Doc Frank again. I hope you liked today's episode. I like to keep it as simple as possible, so I only have one single request for you. If you like this podcast, please tell your friends and colleagues about it. That's all I want, because that's a service that I'm providing to the industry, and I would like as many people as possible to listen to this podcast and learn something from it. So please share, and until next time, keep it simple and bye for now. Thank you for listening.